52-year-old NASA programmer steps around a low hill to spare his knees. 30 minutes later, he's gone. No scream, no gear. 2 gallons of water vanish with him. That's the Grand Canyon's trick. It doesn't just take people, it erases evidence. Tonight, 5 true mysteries from a place that swallows time, sound, and certainty. Watch the pattern build. 1 vanishes while friends crest a ridge. 2 young hotel workers leave no footprints back to their rooms. A body appears that answers no one's questions. The canyon doesn't give bodies back. It gives you silence and the feeling you missed something. So go ahead, dim the lights, let everything around you settle, and breathe for a moment. Because the stories we're about to step into aren't legends or campfire rumors. They're real people, real vanishings, and real moments where the canyon simply stopped giving answers. If mysteries like these are your kind of night, consider subscribing. Now, let me take you to the first one. A honeymoon that never ended. Here's the one boat the river never gave back an answer for. November 1928. Glen and Bessie Hyde push a homemade scow into the Colorado and point it straight through the Grand Canyon. He's 29, Idaho farm tough, chasing a speed record that exists mostly in his head. She's 22, a poet, a new bride, and by Glen's account, game for anything if it means doing it together. The plan is simple in the way dangerous plans are. No life vests, no hired guide, just momentum and nerve. They write postcards at Phantom Ranch. They smile for a camera at the rim. Then they drop into the silence that lives between rapids. The craft matters. Glen built a flat-bottom sweep scow, good for freight, terrible for flipping back upright if it goes over. It rides like a barn door. You don't wear the river with a boat like that. You dare it not to tip you. They run lava's smaller cousins in cold November water, their gear lashed, a rifle, a rope, a wedding present skillet. What's crazy is how normal the days sound in Bessie's last notes. Meals, miles, a mention of numb hands, the way the canyon feels bigger the deeper you go. 10 days later, a motorboat pilot finds their scow below river mile 237. It's perfectly upright, snugged against the bank. Food still lashed down. The camera's there with images developed later, both hides grinning in Tonto light. A woman in wool under a brim hat pretending the cold doesn't bite. No life vests because they didn't bring them. No torn gunnel, no churn marks in the sand that say a drag rescue happened here. Just the image of 2 people paused mid-journey, and the boat that says they stepped away voluntarily. Searchers comb both sides. Tracks show for a few yards, then vanish where rock goes bare. No bodies, no scraps of clothing, no scuffed brush to show a frantic climb uphill. People say, they flipped, but the boat says otherwise. People say, murder-suicide, but the stove is still tied, the bedding still dry. If the river took them, it left no signature where it mattered. Weeks turn to years, and the canyon does what it always does. It holds what it wants. Then the stories start to sprout like brittle bush after rain. In 1971, a river guide tells a reporter that an older woman once pulled her close and said, "I am Bessie Hyde," before smiling it away. In 1976, bones are found at a canyon camp with a bullet hole in the skull. Rumor wraps them around Glen until the coroner names them too old to be his. There's even a woman in the 1930s who guides rafts with a coolness that unsettles men and keeps her past sealed. The whispers attach her to Bessie because people need a shape to pour into the void. Run the options. They scout a rapid, tie up, step out to check lines, and slip. Cold water makes bad swimmers of strong people. Without vests, 2 can vanish fast if the current keeps its grip. But the boat's angled downstream and the lashings intact say they weren't fighting to right anything. Or they camp, climb to get a sight line, and one of them falls in that 5-foot way that breaks bone and breath. The other goes after, and the slope gives the same answer twice. Drag the river below 237, and you still get nothing. November water is a vault. What's crazy is the surface cleanliness of it. Most lost parties leave a rash of clues, a torn strap, a pan and a tamarisk, a set of prints that stop at a ledge. The hides leave a boat staged like they meant to come back in a minute. It's the Grand Canyon version of a table with two half-full glasses. That's why this one lives. It isn't just the romance of a honeymoon in stone. It's the way the scene refuses to marry to any single ending without screaming. Every theory costs you something. Notice how this pairs with what we've already seen. The canyon favors the instead. Instead of bringing vests, they brought confidence. Instead of a self-rescuing craft, they trusted a scow. Instead of a mess, they left order. The pattern isn't drama, it's tidiness before absence. People love to argue they walked out alive under new names. People love to say the river took them clean. The canyon won't say which. It's the honeymoon that never ended, because there's no last photograph that tells you it did. And the boat waits, forever staged, like a question that knows it's better than any answer. If the rim is the canyon's mouth, the river is its tongue, testing anything that enters, never warning before it bites. Water here lies. From a distance it looks calm, even lazy, but just under the skin it's a machine built to punish hesitation. A flat eddy can hide a pull strong enough to take your legs out from under you. A ripple can mask a rock that throws a whole raft sideways. Old guides will tell you the same thing. The river never shouts until it's too late. It hums, quiet, steady, almost soothing, and steals the sound out of your voice when you need it most. In the big bends, a yell travels sideways instead of forward. In the narrows, it dies completely. You can be 50 feet from someone and still be an entire world away. Cold finishes what sound starts. Air hits 100 degrees, but the water is still snowmelt. One slip and it rips heat, judgment, and strength in seconds. A good swimmer becomes a passenger. A 30-second swim can feel like a lifetime, and still not long enough for anyone to reach you. That's why gear resurfaces and people don't. Not because the canyon is mystical, but because hydraulics are cruel, blind, and fast. The river has a talent for taking someone in broad daylight, in front of multiple witnesses, and leaving behind nothing that explains why. And that leads to one of the strangest stories the canyon has ever collected. A disappearance that happened within arm's reach of others, with no scream, no struggle, and no second chance to look twice. Speaking of witnesses, there's one story that puts you on a beach midday with 9 sets of eyes and a guide in a life jacket, and still leaves you with nothing. June 2nd, 2015. Western Canyon. Team trip, 9 clients, 2 guides. The sun is mean, but the mood is not. It's a layover day on a 7-day run, the kind where you park boats, explore side canyons, and let people shake out their legs. 22-year-old assistant guide Morgan Heimer is doing what good assistants do: herding, spotting, keeping the loose edges from fraying. He's got the build of someone who rows all season: long, lean, sleeves over skin, life jacket clipped, a black bandana on his head. Serious eyes when he needs them, a dry joke when a client's jammed in a crack and needs to laugh to unstick. They're at River Mile 213 near Pumpkin Springs, a surreal bowl of mineral water and green slime that looks inviting and isn't. This is where the river pretends to be a resort and then reminds you it isn't a pool. The rules are old hat. Don't jump in the spring. Don't climb the wrong ledge. Don't swim out into the main current. Keep your PFD on. Stay where the guides can see you. It's not a rapid day. It's sightseeing with hard edges. They spread out along a shoreline of broken shelf and small eddies. Clients wade. People take pictures. Morgan stands with one client near the waterline. Words exchanged. He steps a few rocks away, still within conversational reach of others, and then, there's no build-up for this. You look back, and he's not there. Not fallen in with a shout, not flailing, not floating with his orange jacket bright as a flag, not walking back toward the group from a different angle, just not there. The timestamp that day is brutal. Minutes matter, and there are no clean ones. A guide counts heads, realizes a head is gone, blows a whistle. A second guide scrambles for a vantage to scan both the eddy and the main current. Clients are pulled higher on the shelf. Radios crackle. "Morgan?" You can search 50 yards of shoreline in seconds, 100 in a minute, and still fall behind the river by a mile. If he slipped at the seam, the quiet part where the eddy returns to the highway, the current could have taken him around a corner by the time his name finished leaving someone's mouth. Search starts fast. It has to. Boats sweep the bank, eyes raking every foam line and back eddy. You look for a hat, a shoe, a hand. The thing you don't say out loud is you're hoping for anything that proves you're not crazy. The Park Service gets the call. Helicopter goes up. Rangers hike in. Downstream camps get warned to scan the water. The radio net fills with coordinates and descriptions. 2262, wearing a red long sleeve, PFD, bandana. If he stood up, someone would see him. If he floated, someone would too. They don't. Not that day. Not the next. 12 days of air, ground, and boat teams comb the river corridor and the shelves above it. Divers work eddies that are deep enough to hold a body. The helicopter hangs over any pool that looks still. 100 miles of corridor become a grid, and still nothing surfaces. No helmet, no shoe, no knife. The river stays mute. What do you do with that? People reach for theories because it's unbearable not to. They point to Pumpkin Springs and say, "He jumped." He didn't. He knew the rules. They say, "He took his jacket off." Witnesses say otherwise, life jacket on, clipped. They say, "He walked away." Where? On ledges that force you to skirt in full view, through a tourist campground he'd need to cross to vanish. He had no pack, no food, no water. He was working, not escaping. People suggest darker ideas because the brain hates blanks. None of those ideas fit the geography, the logistics, or the witness's timing. What does fit is the same thing the river always offers: the thin margin, the lip between eddy and main, the little seam that looks like conversation and acts like a conveyor. You step wrong at that line, your foot goes from sticky to slick, your shin knocks, your head snaps forward. You're underwater before the sound leaves your throat. If your PFD catches a boil and you're under a hump of current, you can ride a few feet deep for a terrifying distance. The surface won't show it. The faces on shore won't either. Remember the sound problem. Voices fall apart on stone. A splash can read as a wave hitting a ledge. A hand coming up in the wrong water looks like a swirl. When your eyes are scanning three textures, the green pool, the brown current, the white lace at the seam, you can miss a human shape in that noise. Add the time problem. If you don't see it in the first 3 seconds, the next 3 seconds rewrite the map. Morgan isn't the first or the last to disappear in plain sight here. That's the part that refuses to make sense the first time you hear it, and then becomes the only thing that does. It's not because the canyon is haunted. It's because it's exact. The tolerances are tight. You can do everything right and a half step wrong still gets you. The guides debrief. The clients cry. The official reports close with the least satisfying word in English: undetermined. Here's what you're left with. A young guide, sober, experienced, in uniform, with 9 people watching his general space, and a vanishing that leaves no debris. Layer that over the honeymooner's boat with its lashed stove. Different decade, different actors, same appetite. The canyon doesn't need darkness to hide you. Noon works fine. And the river doesn't need noise to warn you. It prefers not to. Rim towns orbit the canyon like little satellites. Tucson, Fredonia, Peach Springs, places where people sleep one street away from an edge that doesn't care who steps close. Everything looks normal. Coffee at 5, shuttle at 6, housekeeping carts squeaking down the El Tovar hallways. But that routine is just a crust. Under it, disappearances slip by unnoticed. Seasonal workers come and go like weather. Young, broke, living in dorm rooms that smell like detergent and dust. One morning a bed is still made, a uniform still folded, and a time card doesn't get punched. No alarm goes out. It's not missing. It's a no-show. And that word buys time. Time the canyon uses well. A no-show might be hungover, hiking, homesick. If you're indigenous and commuting from the nations, people assume you just went home. That assumption becomes the first vanishing point. The rim is full of places where people step sideways into trouble. Bus stops lit by a single bulb. Employee shortcuts through Piñon. Pullouts where arguments happen far from witnesses. You don't need a cliff. You need one wrong turn into brush that looks like every other turn, or one ride you shouldn't have accepted. Shuttle drivers talk about the regulars, the dishwasher in the same hoodie, the houseman with the limp, and the gaps. Faces that appear for weeks and then just stop appearing. Jobs out here are elastic. You can quit by walking out the back door. That elasticity stretches the time between last seen and first looked for. In that gap, footprints fade and evidence evaporates. Tourists vanish differently, jet-lagged, sunburned, trusting maps that show clean lines and bathrooms. One wrong shuttle, one wrong shortcut to a lodge, and they step into an unlit margin where sound dies and landmarks stop matching memory. Searchers find prints, then slick rock, then nothing. In the canyon, vanishing points aren't cliffs, they're schedules. If no one's expecting you at dinner, if your roommate works nights, if your supervisor assumes a swapped shift, your disappearance becomes paperwork long before it becomes an emergency. And the canyon thrives in that delay. August 1957, South Rim. The El Tovar's lobby smells like polish and coffee, the kind of place where tourists lower their voices without knowing why. In the back corridors, the air turns warm and utilitarian. Linen carts, steam, staff shoes on waxed floors. Somewhere in there is Mary Margaret Begay, 20 years old, Navajo, earning steady money at a Harvey House property that promises opportunity with one hand and holds the door with the other. She writes home, often. She jokes about the uniform she's saving. She tells family when her hours change. She's rooted to a routine designed to erase names. Harvey houses run on rules that look progressive in the brochure and predatory on the ground. Women hired young, moral, presentable. Room and board included, which means the company owns the roof and the hallway outside your door. The dorms are neat, the curfew strict, and the distance from the rim is a short walk through dark Piñon. Mary's world is compact. Employee housing, kitchen, public dining room where men stare longer than they should, the back path to the dorm where the night air is colder than expected. She goes out after a shift with friends, nothing dramatic, a normal plan in a place built to make normal feel supervised. They peel off in ones and twos under the porch lights, then the chain breaks. Sometime that night, Mary steps into the canyon's other economy, opportunity for someone else. No alarm, no public scene, no red flags her family can point to later. By morning, she isn't in her bunk. By evening, she doesn't clock in. What the hotel does next tells you why this story still hurts. They don't call her family. They don't file a missing report. They fire her, toss her belongings. A uniform folded by someone else's hands ends up in a bin. The words on a time card become the only official record. No show. It takes her family arriving at the park to visit her for anyone to say out loud what has already happened. She's not here, as if that ends the obligation. The gap between last seen and first reported is the canyon's favorite ambush. On paper, a missing adult is someone who can leave. In practice, Mary is 20, away from home, living where her employer controls the dorm, the path, the language. The assumption that she walked out becomes policy. It buys the predator time. And because she's Navajo, the assumption doubles. If she left to go back, as if indigenous women don't move toward futures as much as away from the past. Her family alerts the Navajo Nation. The nation alerts whoever it can reach. The local police don't know, not until a year later when a body is found near the canyon, and for a minute the story tries to resolve itself. It doesn't. The remains aren't Mary's. The wrong answer doesn't bring a right one. It just proves someone else disappeared along the same corridor. Notice the pattern. We've seen the river erase a young guide in public. We've seen a honeymoon boat staged like its owners stepped away for a second. Here, the vanishing is wrapped in housekeeping. A paycheck stops. A dorm room gets reassigned. A line on a roster closes over a person's name, and the canyon accepts the file as if paper is proof of reality. The institution's tidiness becomes the camouflage. The Harvey system sold a story, adventure with structure. For white women, even that story came with leers and forced smiles. For Mary, it came with fewer protections and more suspicion. A woman who doesn't clock in is a problem. A Navajo woman who doesn't clock in is a stereotype to the people who made decisions that week. When you label someone flight risk, you lower the urgency to find them. You also wash your hands. There's another body in this corridor. Another woman whose case breathes in the same thin air. Ida May, a Navajo mother whose children were found near the rim in the mid-1950s. Different details, same radius, same employer ecosystem, same shrug of, she must have left. If you're looking for the canyon's appetite, here's one answer. It eats administrative time. It chews the hours between concern and action until the trail goes cold. And then it lets wind and stone finish the job. Mary's last night isn't a mystery because it's ineffable. It's a mystery because the systems around her refuse to recognize danger in the shape of a young indigenous woman off shift. Someone knows where she stepped into the dark. Someone watched her walk past a lit doorway. The canyon holds what it holds, but people helped. They helped by not looking. They helped by firing her faster than they called her mother. They helped by assuming the rim is a boundary, not a lure. If you need an image to hold on to, take this one. A keyed dorm door, the rug outside, the hallway bulb that flickers on a timer, and the quiet of a building that should have kept her safe. The canyon didn't need a cliff. It needed that door to stay closed after she didn't walk through it. The canyon has edges you can see and edges drawn on paper. The visible ones are simple: cliffs, drop-offs, seams in the rock you don't dare test. The paper ones are stranger: boxes on a map marked restricted, trails with locked gates, caves sealed with steel mesh. Rangers explain it as safety, and they're right. There are mines that breathe bad air, cultural sites that don't need strangers, cryptobiotic crusts that crumble under one careless step. The closures protect the land. Sometimes they protect people. but they also create shadows. A search hits a fence and pauses. An investigator reaches a locked door and waits for the right badge. A missing person file gets passed from Park Service to county to tribal police, each with a different timeline. If the missing person falls between agencies, especially if they're indigenous, the file can stall before the worry even starts. Paper hides things as effectively as cliffs do. A no-show gets written off as a shift change. A week passes. A report loses its urgency. That's how outlines fade without a body ever moving. The canyon uses distance. The system uses delay. Then there's the unofficial map. Employee trails that cut through dark washes, staff party spots under pinyon, abandoned pullouts where a lot can happen fast and unrecorded. Search grids never touch those places, because those places don't technically exist. If someone disappears off the paper map and into the lived-in one, you can look forever and find nothing. And into that vacuum slips rumor. Down here, rumor moves faster than search updates and sticks longer than missing posters. Some are harmless, stories of perfect shade caves and secret overlooks. Others spiral into fantasy. Caves of lost civilizations, hieroglyphs in sandstone, Smithsonian cover-ups, black helicopters guarding ancient tombs. Myth is easier to believe than paperwork. Grandeur is easier to repeat than jurisdiction failure. That's the canyon's quiet trick. It doesn't need conspiracies to hide the truth. Just rules that make sense on their own and conflict when stacked. And when a legend offers a shortcut into something bigger, people take it, walking right past what's real. Which brings us to the canyon's most persistent myth, the one born from a single newspaper article that simply refused to die. The story is elegant in the way lies are. A boatman named Kincaid floats the Colorado in 1909, glances up and sees cut stone 2,000 feet above the waterline. He climbs, because of course he does, and finds an antechamber the size of a train station, and a honeycomb of rooms deeper than any flashlight can swallow. Copper tools, mummies, lotus carvings, hieroglyphics no one can parse. He tells a professor with the right initials, and the Smithsonian swoops in, barricades the door, and takes it all away. The paper prints the tale on the front page. A century later, YouTube has its thumbnails. Here's what's real: a single Arizona Gazette article, unsigned, riddled with names that don't exist in any institution's personnel files. The Smithsonian looked multiple times because people won't stop asking, and found no Kincaid, no Professor Jordan, no shipments of sarcophagi out of the canyon. The Grand Canyon Historical Society chased the edges and found other newspapers in 1909 treating the piece like a prank. It fits a time of yellow journalism and hoaxers who like to watch serious people run to empty train depots. It also fits a country that loves the idea that its deepest histories belong to someone else. Why does it stick? Because the canyon invites projection. You stand at the rim, and your eyes already see temples in the buttes. They have names like Isis, Horus, Shiva. Those names weren't left by Egyptians. A geologist named Clarence Dutton pasted them on in the 1880s because the forms felt mythic, and he needed labels. The landscape looks carved by intention. Your brain loves intention. It hates randomness, erosion, time. It would rather invent a people to fill those rooms than accept that water and wind did this without leaving you a single throne. Look at the logistics the legend ignores. The entrance sits halfway up a sheer wall. In the real canyon, a hike to a ledge like that is a day of climbing in soft sandals with a rope you made yourself. The cave mouth, if it existed, would be visible from trails and river and aircraft. It isn't. And the inventory inside reads like a catalog written by someone who's never carried anything heavy. copper tools by the dozens, enameled urns by the hundreds, statues weighed in tons. The canyon does not let you haul that much anything across that much air without leaving you bent trees, broken steps, scrap along the approach. There are no approaches. There is no scrap. Then there's the Egyptianness of it all. The article's joy is connecting Colorado to Nile. That joy is colonial. It erases the people who can prove they were here, in this exact rock, 10,000 years long. The canyon's walls hold petroglyphs and granaries and dwellings. They're ancestral Puebloan, Hopi, Havasupai, Hualapai, Navajo, Zuni, Paiute, Yavapai, Apache. The list is long, living. Oral histories run through these rooms. You don't need a myth from across an ocean to make this place old or sacred. The myth does one thing well. It takes the microphone from the people who earned it and hands it to a fabricated professor. And yet, the cave story is useful, not because it's true, but because it shows you how the canyon masks truth. There are caves here, hundreds, maybe thousands, mostly small, mostly dangerous. Some breathe bad air. Some are just seams where the limestone pulled back and left darkness big enough to swallow you if you're not looking. Those are the caves that matter to our pattern. They're not cathedral chambers with gold. They're ankle-breaking holes shaded by catclaw. You step on a crust that looks like ground and it's a lid. You disappear without a scream. That's not mystery in the romantic sense. It's geometry. The cave story also sells the idea of a powerful keeper of secrets. The Smithsonian, black helicopters, nameless rangers blocking your way. The real keepers are bland. They're policy documents, badly designed databases, default race fields that misclassify missing women as white because no one trained the clerk. They're dorm supervisors who think a Navajo 20-year-old will turn up. They're managers who toss a suitcase. They're 6 agencies with radios that don't share frequencies. The legend is tidy. Someone chose to hide something from you. The reality is worse. No one chose, and the gap became a coffin. So what do you do when someone at a bar in Tucson drops the cave into conversation and tells you the canyon is a cover-up? You pivot to the kinds of secrets that matter. Tell them about the guide who vanished in front of 9 people and left no ripple. Tell them about the honeymoon boat that waited like a stage set. Tell them about Mary Margaret and Ida May, and a dorm hallway that had lights but not vigilance. Tell them about a man who walked around a small hill to save his knees and left no track anyone could follow. The canyon doesn't need buried civilizations to be uncanny. It needs 30 minutes, a loose rock, a seam in water, a policy that calls a missing woman a no-show. The artifact in this story isn't a mummy. It's an absence. And in a place this loud with wind and geologic time, absence speaks louder than any myth you can print. The canyon doesn't need cliffs to take you. It needs edges, small ones. A 20-degree temperature drop, a patch of shade with no wind, a bench that looks safe because it feels cooler. Step into it and your sweat stops evaporating. Your skin lies, your core keeps climbing. Judgment slips a few degrees, and a few degrees here is the difference between noticing a seam and slipping into it. Wind lies too. A ridge can roar while the wash below is silent as a cave. People pick rest spots by comfort, not acoustics, and sit exactly where sound can't travel. Dogs lose you there. Helicopters skim right over you. Your whistle is perfect for the wind, but useless in the pocket. Light cheats your eyes. One moment everything is white glare. The next, tamarisk shade turns the ground into guesswork. If that ground is cryptobiotic crust, it breaks. If it's a thin calcite lid, it hinges. Either way, gravity decides the rest. Hydration tricks you into confidence. 4 liters, I'm fine. Not if you started the day behind. Dehydration isn't thirst, it's shortcuts. You contour around a knoll instead of climbing it. Drift into brush that looks forgiving. Cat claw turns you aside inch by inch. Pop out one wash too far, and every landmark lies by just enough to matter. Even gear has opinions. Trail runners slip where boots would stick. Boots skate where algae hides. Sand rolls underfoot like ball bearings. One knee twist becomes the new compass. Forward or stop. Pick wrong, and you disappear under an overhang with no sky window for rescue. Maps flatten lies into lines. A ramp on paper is a cliff band in person. Water on paper is a dry hum in summer. GPS works until the canyon steals your sky. Then you're following your own confidence into a place designed to punish it. Sound is the canyon's favorite trick. Water echoes sideways. Voices bounce and vanish. You follow the louder echo, not the closer one. Minutes leak. Direction bends. And that's all it ever takes. Small things stacked. A degree off course. A liter low. A shaded spot with no wind. 3 mistakes, and you're no longer parallel with safety. You're diverging into terrain built to hide you. That's how people vanish within sight of their friends. How a newlywed couple leaves a neat boat. How an experienced hiker steps off a trail and erases himself in daylight. The canyon isn't hunting anyone. It's just waiting for the margins to run out. June 17th, 2016. Western edge of the Grand Canyon Parashant. 3 people share a plan that's been rehearsed for decades. Drive rough roads, shoulder weight, drop off the map for 9 days, touch the river, come back newer. Ned Bryant knows this ground like an old argument. His 12-year-old daughter has learned to move quiet behind him. Floyd Roberts III, 52, former NASA programmer, tall, lean, with the deliberate calm of someone who thinks for a living and hikes to let thinking go quiet. He's back after a few years away. He's carried harder loads. He's hiked this exact country in 2011. He's brought 2 gallons of water and a week of food because the canyon respects surplus, not bravado. Late afternoon, the start line looks like nothing. A low hill near Kelly Tanks, a brushy knoll between them and the faint track they'll follow toward Trail Canyon. Ned and his daughter go up and over. Floyd calls the choice that feels kind to joints, contour around. They can see each other for a moment, and then they can't. The way trees in a parking lot stagger sight lines and swallow friends. No one thinks this is the moment. It never looks like one. What happens next is measured in half hours. Ned and his daughter top out, drop down, and wait. 5 minutes, 10. They glance at the light. Do the group math every guide does and every parent learns to do. What's reasonable? What's late? They backtrack over the hill. They call. They sweep side to side along the base. They push to the road. Nothing. They bivvy where he should have reappeared and flag their position with sleeping bags and branches because that's what you do when you refuse to believe in vanishing points. Morning brings the same answer. They hike until a phone pings a tower. The first call lands. The canyon has a new clock. The search starts small, 15 people, a helicopter, dogs, and expands the way it should when the variables are friendly. Experienced subject, precise last known point, clear time window, no weather to erase sign. Base camp at Kelly Tanks. Ground teams throw grids across brush and slick rock. Pilots crawl the seams with eyes and lenses. A handler works a dog along the contour Floyd chose, looking for threads of scent in air that rearranges itself without warning. Tracks appear and evaporate as they do here. A print in sand reads like a sentence until the next gust edits it to nothing. On paper, he's findable. He's carrying 7.5 liters of water, more than what the Park Service tells summer hikers to bring for a day, plus food you can stretch by dropping your pace and your heat load. He has a handmade route map from Ned, not a toy but a template. He knows to avoid washes in the afternoon. to pick sky for shade so helicopters have a chance, to keep to edges that read as edges from the air. Unless there's a break in the chain, an injury that steals mobility, or the micro mistakes we've already seen compounding in sequence. This is where the canyon shows its smaller teeth. The brush along that contour is catclaw and oak, hooks that turn your body a degree while your brain keeps walking straight. The ground is a mix of coarse sand, cryptocrust, and scattered limestone plates with voids beneath. You can put a foot down and discover you've stepped on a lid, not a floor. If that lid is 5 feet across, you drop 5 feet into a bowl you can't mantle out of with a 40-pound pack. A twist turns into a knee you can't trust. A knee turns into a decision to skirt for sound toward what you think is river. And that decision pulls you one wash too far. The helicopter flies patterns until fuel says stop. Ground teams eat heat until it eats them back. The dog's head lifts, drops, wanders. The map redraws. They work 10 square miles hard because that's the math. The radius a fit person can influence in that first cycle, plus terrain correction. They find no hat, no strap, no torn brush that says panic, no shade nest, no ration wrapper, no scuff line down a slope. They find the absence we've learned to recognize as the canyon's favorite shape. People point to heat. That week cooked 4 hikers in a day elsewhere on the rim. Heat steals choices. But heat leaves an arc of broken decisions you can follow, and a body at the end if you look fast enough. People point to mountain lions. Tracks would have told on that. People point to getting turned around and walking out of the search grid. Possible, except the grid grew to meet the possibilities as days unfolded, and the helicopter stayed hungry. People point to malice. This isn't that landscape. You can see forever and still miss a single person in the wrong pocket. You can't hide a crime scene here without the land writing it. The canyon never lies outright. It just tells the truth slower than human beings can survive it. Lay the 5 stories flat beside each other and the pattern stops pretending to be subtle. It isn't one killer or one location or one category of mistake. It's one landscape repeating the same appetite with different tools. An appetite for margin, for evidence, and for time. The 3 things the canyon removes before anyone realizes they were even in danger. Margin always dies first. Every one of these stories begins with a small bargain someone made with their own body. Instead is the word that kills. Instead of climbing over a rise, Floyd walked around it to spare his knees. Instead of waiting for cooler hours, Glen and Bessie pushed the river while it was still angry. Instead of checking in on Mary after one missed shift, a manager assumed she swapped with someone. Instead of reading the seam correctly, Morgan took a few steps along a shoreline that looked solid. Instead of telling someone where she was going, Ida Mae did what thousands of parents do. She planned to be right back. The canyon's arithmetic makes every trade look harmless until it isn't. A 30-minute gap, in shade, in brush, in confusion, in heat, becomes a canyon in itself. 30 minutes is enough for a man to step on a thin calcite lid that looks like normal ground. It's enough for a guide to slip into an undercut while 9 people are distracted by lunch. It's enough for a woman to climb into the wrong car on a quiet rim road. None of these stories begin with catastrophe. They begin with normalcy, and the canyon knows how to weaponize normalcy. Evidence goes next. The place is a solvent. It erases the outlines of what happened while leaving the scene looking almost too clean. Sand holds footprints until noon and then exhales them. Brush closes behind a body like a curtain. Slick rock refuses to record anything at all. The river keeps gear the same way a collector keeps relics. It returns the object but strips away the meaning. That's why the Hyde's boat sat neatly tied, as if its owner stepped out for a moment. It's why Morgan could vanish without a splash or a shout, just a PFD last seen on his body and then nothing. It's why Floyd left a last known point so precise that searchers still shake their heads at how it yielded nothing. It's why Mary's dorm room stayed orderly enough to suggest choice instead of violence. It's why Ida Mae's children were found, but she wasn't. The canyon erased her outline and left the most painful part behind. Humans expect chaos around tragedy. Torn straps, drag marks, violent campsites, overturned gear. But the canyon's cruelty is tidiness. It makes the brain invent better stories, conspiracies, monsters, forbidden caves, because the truth feels too small and too unfair to accept. People would rather believe in ancient tombs sealed by the Smithsonian than accept that a woman vanished because someone wrote "no show" instead of "missing." They'd rather believe in river spirits than accept that a seam in the current can erase an adult in seconds. Myth gives grief a shape. The canyon gives it silence. Then comes time. Time is the canyon's bluntest tool, and it doesn't even need weather to use it. Time delays search parties because the rim is built on bureaucracy. Time delays because friends don't want to overreact. Time delays because bodies cool, scent lifts, shadows lengthen, and the canyon's acoustics turn microphones and shouts into confetti. A friend crests a ridge to find cell reception. A supervisor waits a shift before filing a report. A worker assumes someone else saw Mary last. A husband waits to see if his wife is just late. A guide thinks a person is behind a rock instead of under the water. In those delays, 10 minutes, an hour, a shift, a night, scent blows away, tracks reset, heat rises, shadows swallow entire side drains. The search radius widens and the canyon uses that widening like camouflage. Time behaves differently here. Sound dies faster. Landmarks lie. Distances stretch. The river moves the ground under you while you sleep. Heat steals judgment. Cold steals muscle. And the canyon's vertical grammar ensures you can be 10 yards from help and invisible to every angle of approach. That's something no map warns you about. The canyon edits reality at scale. A person becomes a punctuation mark on a wall taller than memory. A tent glows on a beach and nobody sees it from the air. A hiker whistles and the sound travels sideways and dies. A child cries out and the wind stuffs the sound into a crease in the cliffs where even dogs can't follow it. A guide signals to stop. The canyon eats his voice before it reaches the next boat. Indifference is the real antagonist. The canyon isn't malicious, it's mechanical. Wind scrapes scent into layers dogs can't track. Light blinds you in one step and erases contrast in the next. Rock that looks solid turns to gravel under your weight. A wash that feels safe becomes a funnel when a storm miles away dumps water you never saw coming. Even your own breath sounds different inside a side grotto, tricking your instincts into choosing the wrong direction. Layer human fallibility onto that indifference, and every missing person becomes heartbreakingly plausible. Floyd chose the easier contour. Morgan stood too close to a seam. The Hydes trusted a boat that looked steady from where they sat. Mary trusted someone offering a ride. Ida Mae trusted she'd be quick enough to get help. These are not dramatic mistakes, they are human ones. Small, relatable, familiar. Exactly the kind any of us could make on a day we were tired, rushed, confident, distracted, or scared. And when the missing person is indigenous, the canyon's indifference gets multiplied through human systems. Records go missing. Forms get mislabeled. Rumors overwrite facts. Families are told to wait. Jurisdiction becomes a maze with no center. The canyon doesn't have to hide those victims. The system does it for them. Silence plus bureaucracy equals disappearance, even when the body is close. Look again at the 5 anchors left behind. A neatly tied scow, a guide's jacket clipped but empty, a time card stamped without a person behind it, 2 babies found and a mother who vanished between jurisdictions, a GPS-tight location point that still yields nothing. The scenes look clean because the canyon prefers a kind of cruel order. It shows you the moment before everything went wrong and hides every moment after. It leaves you with one intact object: a boat, a jacket, a time card, a child, a coordinate, and asks you to invent the missing story. And the human brain will always invent a more cinematic tragedy than erosion and acoustics and policy delays can provide. If the canyon teaches anything, it's this: the scariest mysteries aren't the ones full of drama. They're the ones full of normalcy. The ones where a person did everything they always do: walk a trail, clock out of a shift, scout a rapid, take a shortcut, go for help. And the canyon absorbed them as cleanly as a breath vanishing into dry air. Indifference reads like malice when you're grieving. It reads like the supernatural when you're scared. But the canyon's real power is precision. It keeps what falls into the gaps of terrain, of timing, of attention, of policy, of sound. And once something slips below those tolerances, the canyon holds it with a patience that outlasts every search team and every hope. 5 stories, 5 anchors, 1 landscape that edits the world with a steady hand. You don't have to believe in curses or caves or old newspaper myths to be haunted by this place. You just have to understand how thin the margin really is, and how quickly silence takes over after it fails. That's the pattern the canyon hides in plain sight: tiny trades, thin margins, and an appetite for the moments we think we can spare. It doesn't need storms or monsters, just a little hesitation and a little silence. If stories like these make you look twice at the world, go ahead and settle back into the dark for a moment, because this is the kind of true mystery we explore every week. Share this with someone who hikes, and if you want more real vanishings, real clues, and real places that don't give second chances, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next deep dive before we leave the canyon behind. Just remember one thing: later is the one luxury this place never gives back.